My first experience with the Transformers is very interesting because, back in the 80s, we had this thing called Saturday morning cartoons, which I discovered doesn't exist anymore. Like, there's just not this whole ritual of getting up, Saturday morning, getting a bowl of terrible sugary cereal, sitting in front of a television, and like just watching hours and hours and hours of entertaining cartoons. And Transformers was one of those cartoons. And then what you would do is you would get up and go outside and play until, the street light came on with your friends who possibly had all the action figures that you didn't have. So then you had to make like this kind of gambling circle to get their action figures in order to feel like you belong. Not saying that is my childhood, but I'm saying that somewhere in the 80s there was a child doing it. And that's what I love about it, is that, I don't know, the fact that we're in 2024, still telling the story of the Transformers and still finding new ways to tell it is what's so amazing. And so like it was a no-brainer for me to say yes to this. It was a no-brainer to say yes to Megatron, because I always wanted to know, where did Megatron come from? Who was he? Was there a youth to him? And like, were there friendships that he nurtured and really cared about? And so it was just like really fun to revisit that, like to really tell my 7-year-old self, like, hey, look, this is what's possible. You don't have to keep stealing everyone's Transformers. You can be one now. It's really important to me.
I remember watching the cartoons, the sort of reruns that were playing in and out of my universe here in Australia.
Yeah.
Action figures that were either mine or neighbours or someone's that were around the house, playing those characters and doing the voices and pulling them apart and trying to spend hours reassembling them. That was always a challenge.
I never done it.
But it was it just inspired the spirit of adventure, and make believe and the fantasy of it all. And the sort of messaging and the allegory and mythology that's baked within the cartoons and these stories that resonates with all of us from different generations. And that's what I found so inspiring and exciting to jump on board and be a part of this world.
Now, we'll say it got me into a lot of trouble too, because I always criticized my father's cars. I'm like, what is this? Like, what? Like, what do you mean that this doesn't turn into, like, what are we doing? This Toyota Corolla is trash, Dad. It doesn't transform into anything. So thanks, Transformers, for that as well.
Yeah. I think that was what was exciting, to create a world that people hadn't seen before, that it had been referenced and talked about, but never seen in this detail. So, and I was watching the film last night, the first time on the big screen actually, and to see Cybertron in all its glory was just mind-blowing. Yeah. And I want to live there. I want to visit that place for sure.
We're not saying that they should make a theme park. Basically, that's all Cybertron.
But we are.
We're not. That's not what I'm trying to. But it wouldn't hurt.
We are. Truly. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt. We could build it.
You could build it. Why don't you just make Hemsworth Land look like Cybertron?
There you go.
that was so easy. That's so easy.
Okay.
Because it's not about me. It's not about my image. It's not about any of that. It's really about you conveying a character just strictly through your voice. And what that entails is a lot more, I think, than when we're actually showing ourselves. It's incredible what can be conveyed, what you have to do. There's this very, very fun thing to do when you're doing voice acting called efforts. I don't know if anyone is familiar with this, but it is kind of like torture. Like you are literally making yourself go through, anytime you hear us grunting or screaming or weeping or anything, like if there's dust flying around, and it takes another part of your brain to do that.
We also record all of the dialogue scenes, and then you sit in the booth and they'll play the image of a fight scene, and you've got to fall off a cliff.
All of that stuff. And the difference is when you're doing animation, like you're doing it in the booth. Like when we're doing when we do Marvel movies and we go in and do ADR and efforts, it's completely different because we're looking at what we've done. But like in animation, it's just like, oh, you really have to be an idiot in this booth. You have to really throw yourself around. And I think that takes a certain kind of humility. Honestly, I'm like, it takes you just have to, you got to humble yourself.
You got to let go.
You got to let go. And it's still fun. I will always hate it, but it's still, you have to kind of get over yourself and just be like, all right, well, that's why it's good that you get to wear whatever you want when you go in there. So if you got Cheeto dust on your shirt and you're in sweatpants, it doesn't even matter. You just go for it.
Well, I had this sort of concern at the beginning. I said, do we have to really push the vocal range and nuance and so on, even more so than the normal animation because they're Transformers? And I said, they're robots. There's not a lot of expression there. So we're going to have to go even further. And that was a bit of a tightrope because, and Josh said, no, there will be little subtle sort of movements that still, we still see them as Transformers, but there's enough human sort of emotion that's going to resonate too. But I had a lot of work to do as far as a little bit of the feel to what Peter Cullen had done, but particularly in the very end of the film, leaning right into that resonance and the cadence. But most of the film having a more playful, youthful version of the character and allowing there to be a sense of humor and fun to it. And I really enjoyed that. And you are just left with your voice, obviously, not your physicality. So I found myself being a little more creative with what I was doing with my voice, which makes me think about, a sort of live action film, maybe putting a little more into my vocal performance, giving a little more life.
What have I
and
been
colour
doing
to
the
it.
whole time?
I'm standing there, sort of squinting and
really
gazing off into the sunset.
just gruff. Yeah, I hear that. As I keep thinking about this film more and more, it's playing on a lot of real life situations that we find ourselves in. Like, I was talking to somebody, one of my good friends that I've had since college, and I was like, oh wow, like, you don't really have a lot of those over time. Like, friendships sometimes dissipate. People go in different directions, be it either our morals change, our careers change, what we believe in, and so to see that is something that story transfers across the board, even in a story like Transformers, is captivating to me. I even said that there's something very Greek and very Shakespearean about this relationship between brothers or friends who decide to go the other way. Something very Julius Caesar, very, it's amazing that cartoons can do that. The animation has the space and the breadth to do that. And it's no different than Megatron and Optimus Prime. I mean, like, we come across people in our lives that impact us, and at some point we're just gonna change. At some point those people will be there, and some points they won't, and we don't know why. Oftentimes, like, I look back at some friendships that have ended in my life and I'm like, I don't even understand why that happened. I have no clue why this person isn't there anymore. But you have to remember that it did impact you at some point, and that there was a reason that person was placed in your life. And also, what I love about this movie is that, what does it mean when you are living in a system that just doesn't work for you anymore? Like, what happens when you're like, oh, what I've been told most of my life is a lie. Like, I actually don't want to be this. I actually don't want to follow this path. I actually, and you get to see that here. There's a lot of morals in this story that a lot of comparisons in Transformers 1 that I didn't realize, but it is the start of something. Like, what happens when we become those people who have our own minds and our own beliefs and just come up against somebody else that has been in our life, or our friendships that we've had in our life, that it just doesn't mesh anymore. And so I think it's a story that resonates across all generations. Like, even the younger kids are going to realize when they get older, there's friends that they have that aren't there anymore. They're going to challenge things. They're not going to believe in things that they used to anymore, and they're going to fight for what's right, hopefully. But that's what's cool about this franchise, is that all those things are there. It's all layered in there in such a beautiful way. And what's really cool about, what Chris has brought to it, is that you get to see that levity. You get to see that kind of kinship and that kind of connection between the two of us, played out through these characters. And that's really cool. Like, we just never seen it before. So that's what I love about this story.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!